I recently left a domestic abuse relationship. I found it very hard to leave because basically I had nowhere to go. I think it's sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith and just go with what feels right. Anything's better than being in an abusive relationship, because not only does it affect you mentally and physically, it destroys your confidence and your well-being.
Physical abuse, it will heal, but mental abuse is hurting, is your heart, it's broken your heart. It's broken my heart, really is broken, especially with the children.
What I thought physical abuse was so much more extreme than what I was suffering. And what I should have thought was any violence in a relationship is abusive and unacceptable, but I didn't. I thought I hear all these horrible stories of really extreme violence that happens to women. So if I'm slapped or pushed a couple of times, then I don't really have the right to be upset about that, because it's not as bad as the other stories you hear. But no relationship should have violence in it from either partner.
I was with my boyfriend for 6 years. I met him when I was 18, and it was very good at the start. Everything was fine at the beginning, but saying that, he's shown his aggression in the first month, really, when he had a fight on our first date with a taxi driver. But we eventually moved in together after about 6 months, and everything was good. And his control started gradually first, just by trying to isolate me from people, just saying things like he didn't like certain friends, thought they were bad for me, so I dropped them gradually. Parents and close family said that they didn't like him for various reasons. I gradually stopped seeing them, so eventually I was totally alone, and that's when he changed, really. When he had a drink, he got really, really vicious, really violent, beat me up numerous times, threw Hoover at my head, punched me in the face, hit me in the face with shoes. Always said that if I left him and if he couldn't have me, then he would scar my face that bad that I wouldn't be able to get anybody else. And I just thought eventually that I couldn't move out because I had nobody, couldn't go back to my mum and dad's, had no friends. Well, so I thought, but that's how they get you to believe, and that's how they have the control. I didn't see him as sexually abusing me, but if he asked for sex, if he asked for sex, he would continually wake me up all night long until we had sex. So eventually it was just easier to agree to it, so he could get a good night's sleep, so I could function the next day at work. Emotionally, he was quite bad as well. He'd ring work to see if I was there. I was on a works Christmas do, and he beat me up at the Christmas do. He was dancing and pinched another girl's bottom, and I got very upset. So because I pulled him over and said how upset I was, he beat me up in front of all my friends. He took all my money, stole from me. He convinced me that it wasn't him that stole money from my bank account. He even got the bank to look into it, because he convinced me that he hadn't taken it. But eventually, years down the line, I found out that he'd taken all my wages as they were paid in, all the monthly wages, so I had no way of paying my bills. Eventually I moved out. I had to move back to my parents because I had no money. He'd run up debts. I had nothing. My self-esteem was on the floor. I felt I had no friends. Just didn't feel like carrying on.
From as long as I can remember, my mum and dad used to fight morning, noon and night. It was mum or dad, really. It was my mum trying to defend herself. From being as small as 5, I remember being absolutely terrified, sitting in between my mum and my dad to try and stop my dad hitting my mum. I remember my dad punching the doors and holes being in and around the house. I remember going upstairs and sitting on the stairs upstairs and listening to my mum screaming and not having any idea of what I should do about it and just being so upset. I remember my dad coming up the stairs and saying, "Oh darling, what's the matter?" as if he'd not done anything wrong. And then he always tried to justify it by saying my mum had upset him. Weeks and weeks at a time it'd be fine, it'd be calm in our house, and then all of a sudden my dad would come home in a bad mood and his tea wasn't on the table at a certain time. The table would go in the air and he would be really abusive towards my mum. My mum was only 4'11" and my dad was a boxer, so he had a real good punch on him. Many times she took him to court and tried to prosecute, but she always went back to him and forgive him, with the hope that he would never do those things again to her. And she was always worried, because she had 3 children, that she wouldn't be able to financially support herself. So she basically just put up with it and got on with it. She used to work in the morning at a nursery school. She used to work cleaning. She used to work for the pool. She had lots of different jobs in order to financially support us. My dad was very good at providing. He used to pay money so she could pay the bills, but she sort of gained some independence by having those jobs herself and got herself in a bit of a better position. When I was 11, my mum's mum was really ill, and my dad refused to take her to the hospital to say goodbye. And I remember the screaming, and he hit her. And I think my mum just got to her tolerance level and decided enough was enough. She never forgave him. She lost that hope that she had, and she decided that day to file for divorce. And so that's what she did. From that day forward, our lives were much better. I was 11 and my sister was 12, but we had freedom. We didn't have to be absolutely terrified that he was going to hit my mum or do something in the house, so we were all walking on eggshells. I would advise anyone who is suffering domestic abuse at this point to think about those children who mum and dad are supposed to protect, that get emotionally abused and seem to be forgotten about in the whole domestic abuse, what's going on. But those memories stay with those children forever.
So I was married for about 20 years, and I was with my husband before he was my husband for 5 years, so I was with him for about 25 years. When we first met, everything was fine. I earned more than him initially, but everything just came out of a joint account. Gradually, as time went by, he began to earn more money, and just as I had paid more and I earned more, he paid more. We didn't divide the finances up. Then we had children, and the finances started to get more complex and difficult. He told me that his expenses were late coming in. He had a company credit card. I was paying the bills because I'd always been the one who had paid the bills, but often there wasn't money for bills. He told me that we needed to remortgage the house. I was very reluctant to do it, but on the first occasion I did agree to remortgage the house because we definitely needed money. There was no money, just to pay, gas bills, council tax, etc. And obviously you can't fall behind with those things. But he assured me that he was going to get a bonus from work, and he did sometimes get big bonuses from work. So I knew that was a likelihood. But then when he got a bonus, he had to get a new car because he needed a new car. There was always a reason why the money didn't go to pay off debt. I saw less and less of him, and obviously we would row because I had 4 very small children. So I realised that the finances were still bad, so I got a couple of part-time jobs. What I didn't realise was that he was remortgaging the house, but by now he wasn't asking me, he was forging my signature. And then it turned out that he was having an affair, so I could see why the extra money might be necessary. He started to take over running the finances, saying as he was earning the money, that's what should happen. And I think now in retrospect I was quite depressed. I was not coping. I had to do it all on my own. And I think I just really was down, but just kept going. When he eventually left me, having told me he was having an affair, when I picked myself off the ground and looked at the finances, I realised he'd left me in a real mess, in arrears with the council tax, gas, electricity, and the house mortgaged beyond the value of the house. All I could say is, if there's a lesson in this, you have to really just paddle your own canoe. You have to be responsible for your own life. You think you know somebody, you trust them, but you can't ever really know another person. I know this makes me sound distrustful, but it doesn't mean you can't love somebody, but you just have to be aware that circumstances may change for them and circumstances may change for you. And you owe it to yourself and your children to be in charge of your finances, to know what's going on. Relationships can be about power, and it's important to know when the tipping point occurs and you become powerless. The sooner you tackle problems of finances, the sooner you go to the Citizens Advice Bureau or seek help, the easier they are to solve.
Nobody should have to live in fear. Please be aware, if you are suffering from any of the following: mental or physical violence, please do not stay. Get out as quick as you can. There are places that can help you. There's women's refuges that are really great. There's a lot of help you can get. Please don't think you have to stay. There is places to go and people who will help. Thank you. Don't suffer in silence. If you are experiencing domestic or physical abuse from your partner against you or your children, please don't think that the only thing is to do is stay. It's not. You need to get out as soon as you can. Be aware there are places that can help you. There are refuges all around that will take you in and look after you and your children till you feel you're ready to go back out into the new home. Please don't suffer in silence. Get in touch. There are people that can help you.